Alrighty, hello Region 4. Hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to our second conversation for our Hispanic Heritage Month series. Today we are talking to Christie Sanchez from Tulane University, and we are going to learn a little bit about her story and acknowledge her as a wonderful, beautiful member of our community. So hello Christie, how are you?
Hello, Belinda. I'm doing great. Our weather here in New Orleans is not exactly what we would like, but it's cooler, which we're definitely accepting after a very humid and hot summer.
For sure. So we want to start off, Christy, by letting you introduce yourself and maybe telling us a little bit about how you came up in Campus Rec.
Yeah, of course. So hi, I'm Christie Sanchez. I'm currently at Tulane University Campus Rec. My title is a long one, but it's the Senior Program Coordinator of Business Operations. And pretty much what that role is very focused on both student development and like training and development, but also the HR processes. So I definitely hire, terminate, pay rate, all that fun stuff that HR loves to do. And yeah, so how I got started, actually back in 2012, I transferred from a community college to Cal State San Bernardino. Previous to that, I was working full-time because I needed money and stuff. I was pretty much paying my way through college, and I decided to quit my job and focus on school. I probably did like 2 months of that and got insanely bored. And I was like, you know what? I've heard on campus jobs are actually kind of fun and pretty easy. So I went through the job search board and saw that Campus Rec was actually hiring. It was member services, so front desk related. Most of my background is in customer service, retail. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to apply and see what this is like. I'm sure the job is super easy. I'm super friendly. I like to think I'm super friendly. Let's do this. And I got hired and I kind of fell in love from there. I just really appreciated the community that it created, especially at Cal State San Bernardino. Like we were very focused on programming, but also making sure that our patrons and our students felt like they were welcome to our rec center and stuff. So after that, had no idea that there really was a career path in this. I was actually going to school to become a teacher. And I think that's kind of why it really meshed well for me. I really enjoyed working with students. So I started as just a front desk worker and then moved my way up within like a year to a supervisor. And I really focused on training. Like, how do I make sure that my employees, my student employees that are also like my peers, feel comfortable and empowered to do their job well. I think that was so important to me, and it kind of comes from my teaching background of being like, how do I make sure they feel comfortable? And ever since that, I just like fell in love with the job, and I knew like, okay, this is actually more fun than just, not saying that teaching is bad, but like I felt like it was more fun, more aligned to what I enjoyed doing. And my coordinator at the time told me all about NIRSA and told me all about the opportunities it offers, that I could get a GA-ship and get a master's paid for, while still working in the field and getting experience doing it. So I think that was April 2015. Yeah. I went to my first NIRSA. It was actually in Dallas, Texas. Applied to only like 3 GA-ships because I was actually late to the game. And I decided to go with Augusta University because it was actually the first facility operations GA they ever hired. So they were looking for someone to come in and actually help them with training, with development, like making sure that their employees knew what they were doing. But not only that, I also had the opportunity to help with their marketing. So I helped them open up Instagram, help them open up Twitter. And then not only that, I was also able to actually start an outdoor rec program for them. So I actually helped them acquire kayaks, took students on hikes and all that kind of stuff. So I pretty much got my hands in everything, which was fun. Like, was it a lot on top of doing a master's? Yeah, but it was fun because it pretty much showed the versatility that you could really do within Campus Rec. So after that, I was just like, wow, like this, I could really make this my career. And even if I want to just do member services or facility ops, I still have the option to go to marketing if I really wanted to, or if I wanted to dive in deeper to outdoor rec, I could do that. So then after I graduated with my master's, I actually got my first job at Stanford University as, I always forget my title there because it changed. Recreation Services Manager, but then it turned into Recreation Services Coordinator of Student Development. So I pretty much came in and like helped them do exactly what I did at Cal State San Bernardino and also at Augusta University, and just like help them really hone down on like the training and development of their employees. Because the cool thing about Stanford, and I mean UCLA used to be the same way, which I'll talk a little bit about UCLA too, because I forgot about that part. Stanford had 3 buildings, and we had to help kind of like make it cohesive, because it's really hard for student employees to, okay, here's one building, here's what I have to do here, but this other building is actually very different. So I worked a lot with that, and like I said, I did the UCLA internship back in 2016 was it? Yeah, summer of 2016. So I kind of missed that during my GA, and I actually did. I did summer camps, which isn't my background. I used to actually do summer camps back when I was younger and like volunteer there. So I decided to do it at UCLA, and it was probably one of the most fun things I've ever done. My supervisor there was Tiffany Coate, who is also a Hispanic woman, and I definitely looked up to her a lot, and still probably talk to her to this day about just campus rec as a whole, and especially being a woman and being a Hispanic woman in this field. So yeah, I did that at UCLA, and then from Stanford came to Tulane. So that's my whole spiel.
Yes, you've got a little bit of everything, which is I think really incredible, and I think you transitioned us really well into the working with Tiffany as another Hispanic woman. Talk a little bit about why we're here, why we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. Talk a little bit about what does that mean to you, and how do you personally celebrate your Hispanic heritage?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. So I'm actually a first-generation American. Both my parents immigrated here when my dad was 15, my mom was 13. My mom is originally from Mexico, and my dad's originally from Cuba. So very two different lifestyles, cultures, but very similar in the same way that like family is important, all these type of things. But yeah, the main way that I try to celebrate this month is just like, and it's not just this month. I feel like the
Sure.
cool thing about being Hispanic is that you celebrate your heritage all the time. It's one of my favorite parts of being who I am, is like acknowledging that, hey, I have Cuban food, but I have Cuban culture. I have Mexican food. I have Mexican culture, Mexican music, Cuban music, all these things that just are great about being who I am. But yeah, especially this month, I think it's more of like a reflection of like, what am I doing to best represent myself as a Hispanic woman? What am I best doing to represent myself as a Cuban woman, as a Mexican woman? And making sure that's always at the forefront of what I do too, because that's what makes me special too, like being this mixed person, but also being a woman and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely bring a lot of those values into what I do day to day.
Wonderful to hear, Christie. I know you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about your start in campus recreation and creating that sense of belonging for your students, your peers. How have you seen that transfer over now that you're a professional in the field and you had a little bit more experience?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. I think it's especially important to like, I think wholeheartedly why I love collegiate rec so much is that we're so focused on relationship building, and that's very much aligned with being a Hispanic as well. Like family is everything. So I think one thing that I truly loved and why I fell in love with collegiate rec back in 2012 was because, I mean, Cal State San Bernardino is actually one of the largest Hispanic communities in a CSU. So it was very easy for me to like get to know people and relate to people on that level. So we all knew that family was important. We all knew that hard work was important. So like, it was easy for us to relate in that sense. But then moving on to like elsewhere, like Augusta University, which is in Georgia, like I was one of the few Hispanic women. It's like, it was very hard to even find someone who looked remotely like me. But it didn't deter me. It was very interesting to learn more about that culture that I wasn't too familiar with, and ask questions and be like, well, how can I bring what I know, especially coming from California, to somewhere like Georgia in the South? And it definitely helped me grow personally as a person, because it made me realize that like what I value, what I think are my morals, and what my culture has taught me may not align with other people. but there's often some kind of similarities. So trying to talk to the students and get to know them a little bit more than just, why are you here? It's like, what do you aspire to be? What do you want to do beyond this? What do you hope to see yourself in a couple years? And like that relationship building is super important, and getting to know them beyond, oh, you're just a staff member who's coming in to work for me. And I think even beyond Stanford and even Tulane and UCLA, it was a lot about like getting to know someone on a personal level. Obviously, some students decide whether or not they even want to share that with you.
Right.
But I think even just meeting them to where they were comfortable, meeting them halfway. So I think that's definitely something that I have learned and continue to fine tune as I get more experience here, is like, how do I make sure that I'm meeting them in a place that they feel comfortable, and then vice versa. Because they may share something with me that I'm like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that, but I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I think that definitely aligns with like what I've been taught as a kid, is like, treat people with respect, meet them halfway, a lot of those kind of things that just align with my culture as a whole.
Yeah, you touched, perfectly on your relationships with the student staff and those you may supervise, who may fall underneath you on the org chart. As a white male, I have a lot of people who, no issues with representation for people who look like me. But talk to us a little bit about the importance for you as a Hispanic and a Hispanic woman, the importance of representation up and down the org chart, in campus recreation, and maybe just in general.
That's a great question, and I think that's something that, especially in these times, we're constantly talking about. Like, how do we get more people that look like me, or more people that are women, or more people that look a little bit different than me in all these different parts of the organization as a whole. And it always feels nice when, like, my first coordinator and then my, I guess, third coordinator, which was Tiffany Goat at UCLA, they were both Hispanic women. So it was really easy for me to relate to them, because a lot of the times your morals and values that tend to align when you're Hispanic. So it's a lot easier to relate in that sense. But that doesn't necessarily mean like when I had a white boss or a black boss or a male boss or one boss, I wasn't able to relate to them. It definitely took a little bit more time. But such is life, right? You have to learn how to work with everyone, even if you don't exactly see eye to eye. But I think that's definitely what has grown me to who I am today, of being like, okay, this is how I see it. This is my perspective, because this is what I've always been taught as a kid. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's right or wrong. And seeing someone else with a different perspective or a different way of doing it doesn't necessarily mean they're right or wrong. It's just how they see it. So yeah, I think it's great. And I definitely see, at least from 2012 to now, a lot more women in higher positions, excuse me. I see a lot more Hispanic women within NIRSA. Like, I don't think I saw it as much back in when I first went to my first NIRSA. I mean, we had the Latinx caucus, was that a couple months ago? And it was so nice to like just bring everyone into a Zoom room and be able to see all these faces that look exactly like mine. And it was comforting, because, like I said, because of everything going on in the world right now, it was comforting to be in a room that people just understood, without having to say, hey, do you understand me? But I think I'm grateful. Yeah, I'm grateful for that we're willing to move people around and see that we're kind of missing the mark in some places, and how can we best represent everyone. I think one thing that I love about Tulane University Campus Rec is we're majority women, which is, you don't see that very often in Campus Rec. Like, you don't, like, it's just very rare that you see a team that is majority women. And that makes it a lot easier to do certain things, because you can talk and you feel comfortable talking. But we also, I think there's still some work to do with a little bit of more like representation. But I think the way that I and my teams try to focus on that is, yeah, I think it's important to get representation on culture, that kind of stuff. But I also think like diversity of thought is also important. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to have different ways of thinking on your team, because, like I said, a lot of the times if you just keep getting people who have the same perspective as you, you're not being challenged, or you're not being able to see things a different way. But from what I've noticed, like, at least when I come into the team, or if I see another person of color come into a team, it's definitely a lot easier to recruit people that look like us. And I think a lot of it is just people feel comfortable being around people like them or being led by people like them. And I'm not saying that a white male or a white woman can't do that. I definitely think they have to work a lot harder to make that happen. But I think something that I definitely love about campus rec, and especially working on a university campus, is that like that's a small part of the world, and it tends to replicate that. And I always love when you get someone who looks like me but younger, and being able to kind of mentor them and that kind of stuff. I think it's so important to see people in higher places, and like being able to reach down and be like, hey, let me help you. How can I best prepare you for the world out there? Because while college is like the world out there, it's not. Like, it definitely isn't. So, yeah.
You've touched on some really, really great information throughout this conversation, Christie. So what advice would you give to someone coming up in the field?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm like trying to say not 10 things. I'll always say a couple things, but not 10 things. I think one thing that I've especially learned is like, don't be afraid of your voice. If you feel like something is wrong, say it. Obviously, say it in the right way. Say it in a respectful way. Be willing to have those conversations with others, even if they are uncomfortable. I think a lot of the times, and especially now, and my director can probably speak to this, especially now, I'm more open and willing to have those uncomfortable conversations. And there's a lot of growth that happens there, not only for me, but for the person who I'm potentially having that conversation with, or with the team. It's definitely scary because confrontation is not fun. But it's also nice to know that your voice matters. Like I said, not just to your supervisor, but your team, all that kind of stuff. And it tends to open the conversation up, because someone more often than not is like, actually, I was thinking that, but I didn't want to say it. Like, and so I think that's one thing. Definitely use your voice. If something doesn't feel right, or you're just not sure, say something. Another thing is, don't be afraid to risk. Like, I think that's one thing that I especially appreciate about collegiate recreation. I had no idea I was going for a GA-ship. Like, that happened within 2 months of my undergrad graduation, that I was like, yeah, let's do it. I moved across the country to Georgia that I had never been to before. Like, don't be afraid to risk it all for an opportunity that you didn't think, or you didn't plan for. I'm a big planner. Like, I didn't plan for that, but it definitely has set me up to be more comfortable, more okay with who I am, and more willing to do whatever is necessary to move forward. I think that's so important. And then my last piece of advice, I'll finish here. Make sure you network. I know we talk about that so much in NIRSA, but like, make sure you network, and not just like, hi, my name is Christie, this is what I do, but like continuing that conversation beyond, hi, I'm Christie, this is what I do. Sending a follow-up email, sending a text message if you got that person's number, calling them on their office phone or whatever. I think I wouldn't have gotten to where I am today if it weren't for my network and those people that have decided so gracefully to mentor me throughout this time. Like, I know I'm a hard worker. I know I'm willing to do whatever it takes, but like, the people who have definitely taken me under their wing has definitely helped me step up and step out to be the better professional that I am today. So definitely networking is so important, especially in collegiate recreation. And there's so many good people out there who have so much knowledge that they're willing to share and want to share. Not even willing to share, but want to share. I think that's one great thing that NIRSA does.
Well, you have brought up so many great points, and I think that anyone and everyone who's watching is definitely going to get something out of this conversation, Christie. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story with us, for spending this time here, and thank you, Region 4, for taking the time to watching this video. We look forward to seeing all of the great things that you do, Christie.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christie.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.